But today, you've chosen to speak out for the first time.
Because there is no good time to talk about.
Royal fans, brace yourselves. Explosive new allegations linked to Prince Andrew have rocked the palace, leaving insiders stunned. A fresh update has surfaced, and it changes everything. What's really going on behind palace doors? Stay tuned for the full story that's sending shockwaves through the monarchy. Don't forget to subscribe. Just when the dust seemed to settle, a familiar name stirred up royal headlines once again. Prince Andrew. Over the past few years, he's remained largely out of the spotlight, but recent developments suggest the story is far from over. In fact, things may be taking a surprising new turn. Let's rewind for a moment. After a wave of public backlash and intense scrutiny, Prince Andrew officially stepped back from his royal duties. It was a major decision, one that reflected how deeply the situation had affected not just him, but the royal institution as a whole. The palace was under pressure, the public had made its voice heard, and the monarchy appeared to act swiftly to protect its reputation. Fast forward to December 2024. A moment that should have marked unity and tradition instead became a striking signal. Prince Andrew, it was reported, had not been invited to the royal family's Christmas gathering at Sandringham. For those who don't know, this isn't just any holiday dinner. It's a time-honored royal event, rich in tradition, highly anticipated, and often seen as a symbol of who stands where within the royal fold. So what did it mean? His absence spoke volumes. It wasn't announced with fanfare or dramatic statements. That's not the royal way. But to royal watchers and insiders, it was crystal clear. Prince Andrew remained firmly on the outside. This wasn't just a quiet season away from the cameras. This was a signal from the very heart of the monarchy that his full reintegration was not on the horizon. For many, this confirmed what they had long suspected, that Prince Andrew's days as a visible figure in the royal family were over. But as we've come to learn, when it comes to royal affairs, things are rarely that simple. And just when everyone thought the chapter was closed, a new twist emerged, one that raised more questions than it answered. While the public front remained composed behind palace walls, things weren't quite so calm. As time passed, reports began to surface that King Charles III, known for his sense of duty and deep concern for the monarchy's reputation, was growing increasingly uneasy about the lingering presence of his younger brother in royal matters. And who could blame him? Being the monarch isn't just about tradition and titles, it's about perception, responsibility, and most of all, leadership. And for King Charles, the ongoing tension surrounding Prince Andrew was becoming a quiet storm that refused to fade. Insiders hinted at what they described as mounting frustration, not the kind that explodes into headlines, but the slow-burning kind, the kind that comes from watching a delicate institution like the Crown wrestle with reputational damage while still being tethered to a controversial figure within its own ranks. Now, let's be clear. None of this was confirmed by official statements. As always, the palace kept its tone measured and formal, but royal correspondents and insiders noted a shift. Subtle distancing, a sense that the king had grown weary of constantly managing fallout, image, and quiet disappointment. There was also growing concern about the wider implications, not just for the royal family, but for the country. Alleged links between Prince Andrew and certain foreign connections had raised eyebrows in sensitive circles. Whispers of inappropriate associations led to concerns about security and discretion. Nothing may have been confirmed, but the mere suggestion was enough to make those in power pay attention. For King Charles, this meant dealing with not just family issues, but institutional ones. Every appearance, every rumor, every connection added pressure. The monarchy was navigating a new era, and the king knew the public's patience was finite. So imagine the reaction, not just inside the palace, but across the country, when Prince Andrew showed up at a major royal event just months later. A public one, visible, undeniable, and completely unexpected. It was Easter Sunday, a time for reflection, family, and, for the British royals, a highly photographed moment of tradition. The royal family gathered for the annual church service, as they do every year. Cameras rolled, crowds gathered, and then something, or rather someone, caught everyone off guard. There he was, walking alongside senior royals, visible to the press and public alike, Prince Andrew. His appearance wasn't officially promoted, but it didn't take long for headlines to erupt. Was this a soft return to public life? A quiet re-entry under the radar, or something else entirely? The public reaction was swift and divided. For some, it was shocking, even frustrating. After all that had happened, after all the steps back, why was he suddenly visible again at such a high-profile event? For others, it stirred curiosity. Was the royal family reconsidering his place? Was the king signaling a new chapter? But for most royal observers, it was confusing. Easter isn't just any day, it's symbolic. It's steeped in tradition. And it's one of the few times during the year when most of the senior royals are seen together in a formal, coordinated appearance. So the question arose, if Prince Andrew was no longer a public-facing royal, why was he there? The palace remained silent. No explanations, no clarifications. And that silence only fueled more speculation. It didn't feel like a mistake, nor did it feel like a comeback. It felt like something in between, a moment that challenged the carefully drawn boundaries between private presence and public duty. A gesture that seemed small on the surface, but hinted at deeper tensions and quiet decisions behind the scenes. And just like that, the buzz surrounding Prince Andrew returned. But after that appearance, he vanished once again from the public view. No official events, no comments, no follow-ups. It was as if the moment came and went without acknowledgement, leaving a strange, uncertain feeling in its wake. Was that a one-time gesture of inclusion, or the beginning of a new arrangement? It would be weeks before any real clues emerged, and when they didn't come in the form of a statement or an interview. They came through something far more subtle and far more telling. When it comes to the royal family, not everything is announced with speeches or press releases. Sometimes the most revealing clues are hidden in the quietest corners of tradition, and one of those places is the court circular. Now, for those who may not be familiar, the court circular is the monarchy's official record. It logs every engagement carried out by members of the royal family, from grand state banquets to quiet luncheons, dry and factual on the surface. But for royal watchers, it's a goldmine. Every name, every placement, every tiny detail is analyzed for what it might reveal. So when a new entry appeared in the early summer, just after the annual Garter Day celebration, it didn't take long for royal enthusiasts to spot something unusual. On that day, most of the senior royals had gathered for the ancient and prestigious Garter Day events at Windsor Castle. The Order of the Garter, Britain's oldest and most distinguished chivalric order, holds a special place in royal tradition. There's a grand public procession, ceremonial robes, and of course, the presence of the monarch and senior members of the royal family. But notably absent from that public procession, Prince Andrew. He wasn't seen walking the grounds, he wasn't waving to crowds, he wasn't photographed with his siblings or the king. From the public-facing perspective, he simply wasn't there. And yet, the court circular told a different story. It listed a private luncheon hosted by the king and queen for the companions of the Order of the Garter. And among the names recorded as being in attendance, right there between other working royals, was Prince Andrew, Duke of York. His presence wasn't acknowledged publicly, but it was officially documented. So what does that mean? This wasn't a random family lunch. It was tied directly to one of the most formal ceremonial events on the royal calendar. The fact that Andrew was there, even privately, meant he hadn't been fully cut out. In fact, it suggested quite the opposite, that he still held some level of internal inclusion within the institution. And if that wasn't interesting enough, his placement in the list raised even more eyebrows. It was just a few lines of text, no commentary, no fanfare, just a simple record in the court circular. But for those who know how to read between the lines, it spoke volumes. The luncheon guests were listed in a specific order, and that order mattered. First, of course, was King Charles and Queen Camilla, the hosts of the event. Then came Prince William, the heir to the throne, front and center in the royal future. And right after him, Prince Andrew. His name appeared before other senior full-time working royals. Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, his wife Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, Princess Anne, the ever-reliable Princess Royal, and even her husband, Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence. Now, at first glance, this may not seem like a big deal, but in royal protocol, order equals precedence. It reflects the pecking order. Who's most senior? Who's most favored? Who sits where? Literally and symbolically. So the fact that Andrew's name was listed directly after Prince William and before other working royals wasn't just a matter of formatting. It was a signal. Subtle, but clear. This wasn't just about family ties. It suggested that within the private inner workings of royal events, Prince Andrew still held a level of precedence. He wasn't shuffled to the bottom of the list. He wasn't quietly omitted. He was given a spot of importance, enough to raise questions. Why was a non-working royal with no official duties listed in a position of such prominence? Was this simply based on bloodline, as the king's brother, or was it something more? A hint of a new understanding, a quiet return to favor, at least behind closed doors. For some, it looked like nothing had changed. For others, it suggested a shift, not publicly, but privately, within the family structure. And just as speculation began to build, royal insiders dropped an even bigger surprise. One that involved a rumored agreement that few expected, and fewer fully understood. As discussions around Prince Andrew's quiet presence intensified, whispers from inside the royal circle began to surface, and what they hinted at was even more intriguing than the court circular. According to a report published by express.co.uk, a source close to the situation claimed that a private agreement had been reached between King Charles III and Prince Andrew. Not a formal announcement, not something you'd see in headlines, but a discreet internal understanding that may explain everything we've seen so far. And here's where things get even more layered. The rumored arrangement was described not as a full return or a complete exclusion, but as a compromise. A middle ground, a delicate balance between two brothers, one a king and the other a disgraced royal looking for a path forward. The insider suggested that neither side was completely satisfied, but both had agreed to meet somewhere in the middle. From Prince Andrew's perspective, he might have hoped for a path back into public life, perhaps even a slow reintroduction to royal duties. That, it seems, was firmly off the table. From the king's point of view, there were reportedly strong feelings about preserving the monarchy's image. A total public break might have seemed clean, but also harsh, especially when dealing with a family member. Instead, this arrangement appears to allow Prince Andrew to remain within the private sphere of royal life, while keeping him firmly out of the public spotlight. In practical terms, this means events like the Garter Day luncheon are still open to him. He can attend private family gatherings that have official ties, but not the televised processions, photo ops, or high-profile engagements that define working royals. It's a tightrope, one that few outside the palace could truly understand. To the public, it may seem inconsistent. How can someone be in and out at the same time? But within the context of royal tradition, it's not unheard of. Royal history is filled with quiet accommodations, unspoken arrangements, and decisions made more out of duty than desire. But even with this reported compromise in place, not everyone is happy, especially not the next in line. While King Charles may have agreed to a private compromise with his brother, not everyone in the royal family is reportedly on board. One person in particular is said to be especially uneasy about Prince Andrew's continued presence, even behind the scenes. That person is Prince William. As the future king, Prince William isn't just thinking about the present, he's looking ahead. He understands that the image of the monarchy, especially with younger generations, is everything. The trust of the public, the relevance of the institution, and the clarity of its values all matter more than ever. So when Prince Andrew's name quietly reappeared in official documentation, even if it was buried in the fine print of the court circular, sources suggest that Prince William was not pleased. He reportedly feels that the royal family has worked hard to protect its standing with the public, and that even a subtle reintroduction of Prince Andrew, no matter how private, could risk undoing that effort. It's not about personal bitterness. It's about legacy, perception, and safeguarding the crown's future. Some insiders have described his feelings as frustration, not just with Andrew's ongoing presence, but also with the broader handling of the situation. To him, any form of visibility, even at a private luncheon, might appear tone-deaf to a public still critical of Andrew's past. William's focus is clear: uphold the reputation of the monarchy, strengthen its connection to the public, and ensure its stability for generations to come. In his mind, discreet participation in official events doesn't align with that mission. But here's where the royal family finds itself caught in a dilemma. Because while William sees the long-term risk, others see a different reality: that Andrew is still family, a brother, an uncle, someone whose removal from public life has already been definitive, yet who remains part of the private circle. This quiet tension between the current monarch and the heir reveals just how delicate this situation is. And it leads us to a bigger question: can the royal family truly separate private loyalty from public accountability, or are the lines between the two now permanently blurred? If there's one thing this entire situation has made clear, it's that the line between public and private life in the royal family isn't just thin, it's almost invisible. Take Prince Andrew, for example. Publicly, he has stepped away. He no longer performs duties, doesn't represent the crown, and isn't seen at official events like Trooping the Color or state visits. To the outside world, he's been removed from the royal spotlight. But privately, that's a different story. Events like the Garter Day Luncheon, though not shown on television or broadcast to the public, still hold deep ceremonial weight. They're tied to centuries of tradition. They're hosted by the monarch and recorded in the court circular, which means in the royal context, they're more than just casual family moments. They carry official significance, even if they unfold behind closed doors. So what does it mean when someone like Prince Andrew is invited to such an event? It tells us that while he's no longer seen with the public, he's not entirely separated from the institution itself. He may not be wearing the velvet robes in the procession, but he's still seated at the table, figuratively and literally, during private royal functions. This arrangement allows for inclusion without visibility. It keeps Andrew within reach of the family while keeping him away from the cameras. It's a carefully calibrated dance, one that may help the monarchy avoid public confrontation while still maintaining internal ties. But it also raises an uncomfortable question. Can the royal family really have it both ways? Can someone be excluded in the public but embraced in private, without that contradiction eventually coming to light? More importantly, what message does it send? Not just to the public, but to other members of the family. If private inclusion continues, could that open the door to more appearances, more visibility, and eventually more questions? The royal household has always relied on subtlety and symbolism. But as modern media grows sharper and public awareness increases, even the most minor decisions can be interpreted in 100 different ways. And while this balancing act might offer a temporary solution, it leaves one looming uncertainty. Is this compromise a one-time fix, or the first step in a slow return? As soon as Prince Andrew's name appeared in the court circular, the response was swift. And it wasn't limited to royal experts or insiders. Across the country, and even internationally, people took notice. The reaction was a mix of confusion, disappointment, and, for some, frustration. Many were surprised, even dismayed, that after such a clear withdrawal from public life, Andrew would still be listed as part of an official royal event, even if it was private, even if it wasn't televised. For those who have followed the royal family's recent efforts to modernize and rebuild trust, this felt like a step backward, a move that risked reopening a wound the monarchy had worked hard to close. After all, the palace had remained silent on Andrew's future for months, and many assumed that meant his role, or lack of one, was settled. But this quiet inclusion told a different story. On social media, reactions ranged from subtle disappointment to open debate. Some commenters questioned the royal family's judgment. Others wondered if the event had been a test, a way to gauge public reaction without fully reintroducing Andrew. There were even those who believed it was a signal that behind the scenes, the door was never fully shut. And then there were those who defended the move. To them, Andrew is still a brother, an uncle, and a son. A family member who, despite everything, remains part of the royal circle, even if no longer in the spotlight. For this group, the luncheon wasn't about public forgiveness. It was about private reconciliation, a family moment, albeit one connected to tradition. But for many royal watchers, the biggest concern wasn't the luncheon itself, it was the pattern. Because once someone begins attending private events again, what stops them from appearing at others? And more importantly, what happens when the next event comes around? A wedding, a coronation anniversary, a holiday, all situations where public and private lines blur. If Prince Andrew is quietly included now, will that become the new normal? The reaction to this one event revealed something critical. This story isn't over, and public interest hasn't faded. In fact, it may have just been reignited. So where does this all lead? That's the question everyone's asking. Because while nothing official has been declared, the signs suggest that this arrangement may not be a one-time exception. Let's break it down. The Garter Day Luncheon, though private, was still part of a formal royal tradition. The fact that Prince Andrew was included suggests that this wasn't just a family catch-up. It was an official royal moment that simply took place behind closed doors. And if the palace was willing to include him there, what other private royal engagements might also be open to him? This brings us to the idea of a new royal reality, one where Prince Andrew becomes a quiet fixture in the background. No cameras, no press releases, just his name, occasionally appearing in the official records of select invitation-only events. It may start with luncheons, but what about future gatherings like royal weddings, christenings, Jubilee-style celebrations? While public-facing appearances may remain off-limits, there's no telling how often he might be invited behind the scenes, especially if these events remain private. And then there's the matter of timing. This quiet re-entry came at a moment when other royals, like the King, Queen Camilla, and Prince William, are carrying the weight of royal duties. Could Andrew's internal presence be a subtle way of maintaining family unity without reigniting public controversy? Or, as some speculate, is this an attempt to slowly reintroduce him in a way that tests the waters? A gradual effort to shift perception by showing that, at least within the family, he's still accepted? Of course, there's always the chance that this is where the line is drawn. That the luncheon was an isolated moment, a nod to tradition and rank, but not a signal of change. Still, nothing happens by accident in the royal family. Every invitation, every name placement, every appearance in the court circular, they're all intentional. So what's next? More private invitations? Subtle appearances at internal ceremonies? Or another quiet step toward closure? For the institution and for Prince Andrew. One thing is clear, the royal family is still working through this, carefully and quietly, and the public is watching closely. At the heart of this entire story lies a deeper, more emotional question, one that goes beyond official protocols and public perception. Is this about loyalty to the monarchy or loyalty to family? Because no matter what Prince Andrew has lost publicly, he is still King Charles's brother. He's still a Windsor. And for all the structure and tradition that comes with royal life, the truth is, it's still a family. So when the king allows Andrew to attend private events like the Garter Day luncheon, is it about forgiveness, inclusion, a quiet show of compassion? Or is it simply about maintaining appearances behind the curtain without reigniting a storm in front of it? That's what makes this moment so complex. On one hand, the king must uphold the values and dignity of the monarchy. He must protect the public trust, ensure stability, and set an example. On the other, he's balancing the emotional weight of family ties, bonds formed long before duty ever came into the picture. The decision to include Andrew, even privately, walks a razor-thin line. It may be a personal gesture, but it comes with public consequences. And the tension doesn't end there, because for Prince William, and likely others in the royal orbit, every move the family makes sets a precedent. It communicates something about the values they're choosing to carry forward. And when someone who's been sidelined is still quietly brought into royal events, it raises questions not just about that one moment, but about the tone being set for the future. Is this the royal family showing empathy and unity, or is it taking a risk, one that could alienate the very public they rely on? And then there's the emotional impact. To those watching closely, people who care about the monarchy, who grew up respecting its traditions, the quiet return of a sidelined figure can feel confusing, even hurtful, especially when there hasn't been clear communication about why it's happening or what it means. But to others, it might look like a family trying to navigate an impossible situation, not with grand gestures or public apologies, but with subtle compromises and difficult decisions behind closed doors. It's not just a matter of protocol. It's about identity, legacy, and the struggle to reconcile past, present, and future, all within the walls of one of the world's most watched families. We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and join the discussion. And if this story left you with questions or made you think differently about the royal family, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update.